Hey guys, welcome back to Steve Basinger Fishing. I'm fresh off a trip down to Texas to fish Lake Fork and a couple other little lakes down there. We're mostly there for Lake Fork. And I gotta tell you, if that's not peak spawning, like bedding activity down there, then I can't imagine it was going any harder than it was before we got there. Like they were on them pretty hard. Well, if you watch my last video, I talked about how I find bedding bass, a little bit about how I attack those fish. Well, in today's video, I got some new footage. I got a couple new techniques, but really more refined on what we talked about already. And I wanted to get that on video out there into the tube for you guys while it's still kind of fresh in my mind. So we're going to hop in a boat. We're going to talk about some of that. All right, now that I have all my stuff squared away, got my things sitting here. These are some of the things that I caught my fish on, my bedding fish, while I was down there in Texas. We caught other fish other ways, but these were the more, I thought, interesting ways that we caught them. So that's really all I'm going to cover. But some of this is going to touch on the video that my last video. But to get into it, we found bedding fish on Lake Fork, apparently a little deeper than what you normally find them. The lake was like 3.5 feet low, which I haven't been there a ton of times in my life, but that's definitely the lowest it's ever been when I've been there. I did speak with a guide while we were there one day, and he said that the fish were spawning deeper than they normally do, and we both kind of theorized that it's because the water was lower. There's less cover to make the fish feel safe to spawn a little shallower. In fact, if it was not for the spawning fish, it was hard for us to find any fish shallow, except early in the morning and late in the evening, which is not normal for that lake. So again, you know, there wasn't a bunch of grass in the water. There wasn't a bunch of shoreline cover. You just had stumps like you have everywhere on Lake Fork. So anyways, found them spawning a little bit deeper. On Lake Fork, that lake, for whatever reason, when I would find beds, they would normally be darker spots. So instead of looking for light, fanned out areas, when the bass would fan out areas on Lake Fork, they're fanning away sand is what I would find, and then whatever's below that sand was something dark. So that's where they would be. That's where the beds were. So I would be looking for those things, and then as I'm coming up on it, doing all the normal things that I do, then I'm just looking for movement. Well, the fish that we found on them, there was almost always a fish on a bed. If we seen a bed, we could almost always see a fish with it. And because Lake Fork is a pretty popular lake, when I say pretty popular, I mean incredibly popular. There are boats everywhere. Those fish have seen everything, right? So a lot of my normal, run-in-the-mill bed fishing tactics that everybody does didn't really get me bites. So I went with some of my more off-the-beaten-path stuff. So we're going to start with the first one. And I touched on this in the last video, but that was using a 6 Sense Panorama Shad. Now this is a 6.5 version, 6.5 inch, and I rig it up on a stand-up jig head. This is it's an Omega. I don't know what kind it is. Basically it's a shaky head, but it's got that flat spot on. It's got a screw lock to keep the bait on there fairly well. This bait, it didn't stay on very well because this is so soft. You can actually see I've chewed the tip out off the nose because it was coming out so much. But this exact one still got the teeth marks in and everything. This is what I've caught. I caught a number of my fish on down there, including my biggest one, which was only 5.5. You can say that when you go to Lake Fork. It's only 5.5 pounds. Well, that was my biggest one, and here they are packaged. I think 6 Sense is going to stop making these if they haven't already, because I've noticed pretty much everywhere that's selling these right now, they're like in the clearance aisles, which tends to mean they're not going to make these anymore. So you can go around and find these pretty cheap compared to what they were before. They're still not, they're not cheap. This is a 2-pack and they're still like $7, but cheaper than they were before. They were like closer to 10. But I would throw that out on the bed, I'm not gonna rig it back up on here, but I'd throw it out on the bed, and one, it's a big bait, so I can see it very well. But two, I like that it could sit up on that jig head, and I could kind of make it look like it's feeding. And a lot of times, this would be the very first bait that the fish would actually show any interest in. And by interest, I mean you could see it angry. You'd throw up on the bed, and yeah, it would kind of swim off. You know, maybe it'd not run off in a panic, but dart to the other side of the bed. But when you see them turn around real quick and look back, that's a pretty good sign that this fish is catchable. You just have to keep pestering it. And I'll admit, pretty much every fish on a bed while we were there probably took us about an hour to catch, which is on the long end. You know, that, again, it's Lake Fork, but these fish have been caught a bunch of times. In fact, the 5.5 that I caught, I watched somebody catch it about an hour before I caught it. That's how I knew it was there. I watched people catch it. Anyways, big gizzard shad. I don't know so much the fact that it's a gizzard shad on that lake that they don't like, or if it's just the fact that it's a big bait. If you watch, like a lot of guys in Florida, I know South Texas, California, when they're bed fishing, they'll take these big, they're like 8-inch white tubes, like huge giant tubes, and that's what they'll sight fish with. And I know they're using white so they can see it, but I believe the reason they're getting bit on it is because it's such a big bait there in the bed that the fish does not like that. I think this is a similar concept. It's just a beefier bait, a bigger profile than what a fish normally sees come across a bed. So with that, here's a clip of using the panorama shad while I was on fork and catching that 5.5.
That's a good one.
There we
Lot
go.
better than I thought she was.
Whew. That took way too much work.
That might be biggest so far. Beauty. Hell yeah, one more. I like it.
All right, so the next one, we had actually went to a different lake on one of the days. I think it's called Lake Welsh. I don't know. It's a cool lake. Real clean, had a bunch of hydrilla. And again, fish were on beds everywhere. So we were heading down this grass line, fishing this hydrilla. And as I looked down the inside grass line way ahead, I could see this big fanned out area about the size of the front deck of my boat. And I seen a fish on it. And then as I get closer, I see another fish. And by the time I get up to where I'm a decent distance away, I'm far enough away that I feel comfortable. The fish can't see me, but I can see them pretty well. There are actually 4 bass on this bed, all about 4 pounds. Now, I don't know that they're all spawning on this bed. I couldn't find a specific spot that it looked like they were guarding, but there were 4 bass, all in very close proximity to each other, definitely patrolling this bed, this fanned out area, and they were comfortable with each other's proximity, you know, so that tells me they're probably spawning. Perhaps something was garden fry, but they didn't have that kind of body language, if you will. So as I looked at it, I'm like, man, those are great big fish. Again, they're all about 4 pounds. They're spawning next to a laid down tree, and then the rest of it is surrounded by just really thick hydrilla. So I'm looking at all the rods that I got rigged up that I would normally throw at a bed, and everything's on fluorocarbon line. You know, it's all 20 pounds, so it's a good line, but it's not something I'd want to tangle in a bunch of hydrilla with. So I'd like to have braid for that. Well, the only two things I had with braid was a frog and a popar. And the reason I have that popar on is because I'll get fish to come up and either look at or swipe at a frog when they're spawning, but they normally miss it because they're not really trying to eat it. So I wanted those treble hooks. So I picked up the popar. And I went with, this is the exact one, I went with a bluegill color. Not that I think the color mattered all that much. It probably didn't. But I wanted something, I would like to have a big popper to see if that does anything, but this is the biggest one I got. But I wanted something that had some treble hooks that if they come up and just want to barely kiss that bait, I got a better chance of actually getting this fish. So the very first cast, I toss up there, toss it past the bed, work it back, and as soon as it makes it into that fanned out area, two of the bass, they just kind of mosey off, right? And then the other two, they're certainly checking it out, and one seems much more interested than the others. So I finished that cast, make another one, and when I get it about halfway across that fanned out area, that one that was interested he's just pissed. He can't stand that it's there. It's right under the bait the whole time, and every time I twitch it, jerk right under it. Twitch a little more, jerk right under it. And then right when it makes it out of the fanned off area, I twitch it one more time, and it was one of the most hellacious blow-ups I've ever had. The footage you're about to see does not do it justice because GoPros do not get footage at distance very well, but it was an incredible blow-up. It was awesome. It's one of the few top water sight fishing bites that I've ever had. It was just so cool. It wasn't even the biggest fish I caught, but it was just the highlight of my trip. It was so cool to see. There, I count at least 4.
Yeah. All with the same size too.
Cool, that one is like... Oh, that was so badass.
Oh, dude, he's bigger than I thought.
Oh, that was cool. Okay, you're next. There's 3 more for you.
Here's the problem. I don't see me getting this braid.
All right, now this last one was on that same last lake, on Welsh Lake, and I think it's actually the first bed that we pulled up to. There were 2 bass on it, and we seen the male first, I think, and he's probably 2.5 pounds, and then this female pulls up, and she's bigger, 4.5 or so, and we could not get these fish interested in basically anything. My buddy in the back, he had thrown a poppin' frog or some type of frog over it, and that was the only thing that we got a fish to come up and look at, and it was the male. He would come up and take a look at it. Wouldn't hit it, but he'd come look at it. Well, I start going through things, trying to figure out what to throw. I threw the panorama shad. Didn't really seem to care. I don't know that there's gizzard shad on that lake. Maybe that's why she didn't seem to, or either one of them really seemed to care. But I know there's bluegill. I've seen those all over the place. So I picked up a Berkeley Gilly. I don't know how well you can see those. It's bluegill profile bait. And I don't know why I rigged it up on this. Don't ask me why. But I rigged it up on a swing head. I think because I had something normal, some type of creature bait rigged up on this in the first place, and I just took this off and threw it on there. But the few casts before this, I had actually had a swim bait on, a bigger soft plastic swim bait, and I rigged it up, and swam it through there, and actually had that female follow it all the way up to the boat, and she flashed on it but didn't eat it, which is what made me want to go to this bigger profile. So anyways, I had repositioned the boat because I felt like we were too close, so I got a little further away, dropped the power poles, and then now we're casting to it. But now we're far enough away that I can't see what's going on. So I make a cast with this at the bed. I reel it up kind of to the bed, and I lift the power poles and let us kind of drift, towards the bed a little bit. And then I look up, I see my bait, and I can see the female has like nose down to it, right? So I'm like trying to hurry up and drop my power poles. And these stupid stomp switches, if you don't have them, like, man, they give you fits sometimes. And I couldn't get the power poles to drop. So actually, my buddy in the back hit the buttons here at the console, gets them to drop. So we've drifted further than I want to. While he's doing that, I'm like, okay, so that's taken care of. I reel up my slack, and my line is under the boat. Like, the bed is still 20 yards or more ahead of us, but the line is under the boat. That fish had picked this thing up and ran 25, 30 yards towards us and kept it in her mouth all the way under the boat. And then I set the hook. And this is probably more of a blooper clip than it is a let me teach you how to fish kind of clip. But anyways, I thought it was kind of funny. Thought you guys might want to check this one out. Yes, please, just double tap it. She followed it all the way out. I never even seen her pick it up. I seen her up there follow it, and then I saw power poles. Then I looked up and my line is all the way out here.
I can't get it. God dang it, quit. Come here, baby. Rib cage. Oh,
Hook comes right out. She's not as big as I thought she'd be. Unless that's not the...
That's about what I was thinking.
Unless that's not the big one. I don't know if that's my wound. She's got a hole in her.
She got some sores on her and stuff.
Well, she's got like a hook hole. I don't know if that's from me just now or not. All right, that's all we're going to have for this video today, folks. Hope you like it. Hope there's something you can pick out of it, or if it's something that you think is helpful, or if you just like the idiocy in me, because man, is there a lot of that. Anyways, drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Hit that like. Subscribe if you want. I don't care. I do this because I like to do it, not for you guys. Anyways, till the next time, guys. We'll see you on the water.